Out of all the anime out right now, Gachiakuta is by far the one I'm most excited for. If you guys haven't yet heard about this series, you better start listening, because the manga is finally getting its upcoming anime adaptation in just a few days. I'm not gonna lie, I hadn't heard much about this anime until its trailer dropped, but after watching it I decided to go and read the manga, and I was just shocked by how cool the world was. Gachiakuta is so much different than any anime or manga I've seen recently, and I have to give all that credit to the world building. It's cool enough that there's plenty of awesome characters, but the environment is just on a whole other level. It also has one of the coolest and most unique power systems I've seen in a while, and today I'm going to be covering all of that. Heads up though, if you're anime only and want to go in completely blind, maybe just come back to this video when you're ready. I'm not going to dive into any deep lore or plot twists, but there's some manga spoilers that I'm just going to have to go over. If you're alright with that though, then let's dive in. In Gachiakuta, the world is dictated by societal divides and corruption. At the very beginning of the manga, we're introduced to Rudo, a boy who lives in the poor half of town. We later learn that this place that Rudo lives is called the Sphere, and it almost looks like a floating platform that's divided into two sections. There's a wall that divides the sphere, creating an intersection filled with pristine white construction and uppity people, which is contrasted by the dark dingy slums of the outer wall. There's clearly a lot of disgust for the poor by the rich, and we see this mostly through Rudo. Rudo's favorite hobby is collecting trash, as in this world everyone seems to be so incredibly wasteful. Compared to everyone else though, Rudo sees the beauty in other people's trash, claiming that all objects have value. His adoptive father also told him that if you take care of an object long enough, you can give it a soul, something that Rudo believes in is a major influence for his powers, but I'll touch on those later. Anyways, cut to Rudo being framed for a murder that he didn't commit. He's now about to be punished for it. This is where we get introduced to the pit, one of the most mysterious and intriguing aspects about this world. When looking off the edge of the island, you can't see down, it just looks like a black void as far as the eye can see. On the edge of these cliffs though, we can also see large pipes that are constantly pumping trash down into the pit. For his punishment, Rudo is sentenced to death and dropped into the pit, only to wake up in a place completely foreign to him. It's a land literally full of trash as far as the eye can see, but he's not safe just yet. The air is thick and it's incredibly hard to breathe, and before he could even process anything, a massive monster made of trash started chasing after him. Cutting out some of the major plot points, Rudo ended up being saved by the one and only Enjin, my personal favorite character in the series. We learn that this place is called the Ground, an area where all the sphere's trash get dumped, and there's actually a whole lot of people that live down here. We also get a first glimpse at Rudo's power, which is just as intriguing to us viewers as it is to Enjin, as apparently Rudo is a lot different than the rest. While the Ground knows of the sphere, it seems like the Spherites actually have no knowledge of the Ground whatsoever. You might be thinking it's weird that they wouldn't know since they could just look down, but there's actually a dividing section between the two known as the border. Looking down from the sphere it just looks like a black void, and looking up from the ground it shows a thick hazy fog. This border is the most mysterious part of the series in my opinion, as we also get introduced to another character because of the border. When Rudo is falling through this boundary, we got to see that the inside actually had a lot of space to it, and inside this space resided a large dark ethereal figure, curled up far off in the distance. All we know is that this being is known as the Watchman, which sounds significant because Rudo's gloves come from the Watchman series, which is an aspect that I'll touch on later. While this whole sphere and ground dichotomy is mysterious and interesting, there's a very real and known effect of the Spherites' trash. Honestly, I'm not really sure how the sphere produces so much trash, but it's literally enough so that large portions of the ground are entirely made of trash, and instead of regular weather patterns, they have trash rains and trash storms. In fact, trash falling out of the sky is so common, it's one of the most frequent causes of death on the ground, especially during major trash storms. To protect from this, many cities and towns on the ground are built with large walls that cover major portions of the town, although there's usually still some exposed areas. I said earlier that when Rudo was dropped into this world, he could barely breathe and that the air was toxic, so you might be confused on how there's functioning cities. This is because the ground is actually split up into zones, and the one that Rudo dropped into is No Man's Land, a really bad polluted zone. If you're in a safe zone, the air is safe to breathe, but the polluted zones are filled with so much trash that the air becomes toxic, and somewhere like No Man's Land, if you go in without a mask, it's lights out in 15 minutes. These masks are also a key part of Gachiakuta, as all the cleaners have to have masks to protect themselves from the toxins when fighting trash beasts. Until we get more information on the sphere and ground's relationship though, that's about all we know so far, but let me know if you guys have any theories about how they might connect. Moving on from the setting though, it's time to take a look at some of the characters, starting with the cleaners who serve as an introduction to the world's power system. Rudo is taken in by the cleaners, and gets to witness firsthand the power of givers. Giver is a term for someone who is able to give life to an object. These objects are known as vital instruments, sometimes referred to as jinkis. The entire world of Gachiakuta is built on these items, which is in stark contrast to so many other animes that focus on just powering the body instead of items, which I think is super unique. The thing is, it doesn't seem like everyone can be a giver, and every vital instrument is different depending on the user. You can't just pick up an item and fight with it. The item has to be deeply personal and important. By loving and caring for an item over many years, the user can infuse their item with anima, which is essentially just the versus term for some kind of mystical energy. Essentially, if the user has the innate properties of a giver, they can then use that item. When I say use an item, I mean the item literally transforms into something else. An old blow dryer can turn into a massive air cannon, or even a simple stick can turn into a sturdy scythe. What the anime doesn't really explain though is just who can actually be a giver. It seems that most people who cherish items can be givers, but there's also some people who want to be givers and just don't seem to have the ability. This becomes super important when you take a deeper look into the cleaners though, as not having a jinki becomes a lot more of an issue than you'd think. In Gachiakuta, cleaners are the main guild of protagonists fighting against the evils of the world. While there are plenty of bad humans that we encounter in the series, the main duty of the cleaners doesn't have to do with people, it's exterminating trash beasts. Remember that monster that I mentioned earlier when Rudo fell into the pit? That was a trash beast. What I didn't mention is that Rudo actually cut the beast in half with a piece of metal, only for the thing to fix itself right back up in no time. This is because the beasts are also made of anima, so unless you bring them down with a vital instrument, they're not going to stop kicking. This is why being a giver is so important, as without a jinki you can't fully take down a trash beast. This idea is portrayed through a subsection of cleaners known as supporters. While almost everyone in the cleaners has some sort of jinki, supporters are members who help without being givers. Tons of people flame these guys for being useless deadweight, but supporters are actually extremely useful even without jinkis. The first supporter that we're introduced to is Gris, who's a very positive man despite not being a giver. While he may not be able to actually destroy trash beasts, he can still beat them to a pulp and send them to a giver to finish him off. His grip strength and punching power are insane, so he usually takes point on cleaning up stragglers and defending his comrades. Gris also had an object that he cared for though, and yet he still couldn't use it as a vital instrument. It's never really explained what the requirements are, but it seems like just caring for an object might not be enough. Yes, the time you spend with it and how you treat the object are factors too, but sometimes people can do all that and still not draw out the power of their tool. The manga's only at chapter 140 though, and it's suspected that it might not even be halfway done yet, so there's probably more explanations that we'll get later on. Anyways, I've been teasing them for a while now, but it's about time I explain who the cleaners really are and what they're capable of. Gachiakuta doesn't really have any wasted characters in their show. About everyone has some pretty unique ability with some relevance to the plot. Compared to something like MHA, which has 10 billion different characters that might get a sliver of screen time, most of the cleaners all get their time to shine, and if they haven't, I suspect they will in the near future. There's more that we haven't been introduced to yet, but right now we know of 23 cleaners at the moment, with about 4 of them being the center of attention. These 4 include Rudo Surebrec, Enjin, Zanka and Riyo Reaper. There are plenty of powerful cleaners, but these 4 all come from the Akuta team, a subsection of cleaners that are primarily frontline fighters. The potential of some of the other members hasn't been fully fleshed out, but based on what we've seen from these 4, they're definitely some of the stronger members of all the cleaners. For starters, let's take a look at Enjin, one of the most featured characters and probably the current strongest other than Rudo. Enjin's jinki is an umbrella which when activated turns into a more sturdy tool with a bladed edge, and functions like a spear and shield. He calls this tool the Unbreaker, and he's very skilled with his weapon. Enjin can open up his jinki to stop incoming attacks, or use it like a baseball bat, where he can even extend his Unbreaker with a long rope to let him fight at long ranges. His most destructive ability though is the Octa Shredder, where he jumps really high in the air and then steps on his jinki, driving it into the ground and tearing through anything that it passes through. He's also the leader of the Akuta squad, and carries the weight of his comrades' safety on his shoulders. Then there's Zanka, the self-proclaimed ordinary guy trying to surpass the geniuses of the world. Zanka's jinki is a simple stick that turns into a crescent-like scythe upon activation, and while he's not as skilled as Enjin, Zanka has an incredible will and persistence to keep going no matter what. He doesn't have any crazy special moves, he's just really good at handling his vital instrument with great proficiency. Zanka's a character I also really like, and I hope that we get to see him have some kind of level up soon. There's also Riyo, who's a little more on the mysterious side. Ryo's jinki is a pair of scissors that grow from handheld size to larger than her body. She also fights with the scissors on her feet instead of her hands. Don't ask me how she does it, that's just some anime logic, but regardless it's still sick as hell. And last but certainly not least, we have Rudo, the boy at the center of it all. Rudo's incredibly special in that his abilities are completely different from everyone else. While all the givers only have one item, Rudo can use his ability on far more than one, however there's still many limitations. I should also mention that not all givers have to cherish the items themselves. People from certain lineages have vital instruments passed down over time that they can use, so there's still some flexibility within the system for unorthodox powers. Anyways, back to Rudo though and the limitations on his powers. Funnily enough, Rudo can't actually transform good items. The only thing that he can use is trash or other people's possessions. As Rudo has always seen the value in other things that people don't, Rudo is very good at giving life to trash. There is a caveat though, since these items are trash they don't have as much power as the other items, so anytime Rudo transforms a piece of trash he draws out all of its usefulness at once, causing it to disintegrate once Rudo deactivates his powers. Rudo is also incredibly creative, so he can choose how he wants to transform the trash when he's using his powers. He's done things like causing the ink of a pen to erupt spikes from the ground, and turning a box into a large kaiju beast that eats things, even going as far as to turn a keyboard into a mini-guided missile system. He's done even more than that, point being that the possibilities are endless. There is one part of Rudo that I haven't yet touched on though, and it's his infamous gloves. Rudo's gloves were gifted to him by his adoptive father Regto, as a way for him to cover his hands. Rudo's hands and forearms are extremely scarred, yet the reasons his hands were turned that way have not been yet revealed. Even though we know some stuff about the gloves, there's still so many more questions than answers. It's revealed that Rudo's gloves aren't just some rundown gift that Regto had, but they're actually part of a famous collection called the Watchmen series. From what we've seen so far, there are 4 parts of the Watchmen series: the gloves, boots, coat, and book. They each seem to provide different use cases, with Rudo's gloves being the one we know most about. He named his gloves Thur and are technically his jinki. Even though there's some jinkis that don't transform, they're not usually used for combat. Rudo, however, has a jinki that doesn't transform, but lets him transform other materials instead, an ability unique only to him. These gloves lets him transform things up to 3 times, and if he uses any more than that, he'll start to take physical damage and get nosebleeds. He can also combine his 3 uses into one, gaining 3 times the strength that he would normally have gotten, although it drastically reduces his options and takes a heavy toll on his body. The details of these gloves though haven't been revealed yet, as we don't really know the recovery time for Rudo to be able to use his powers again after he used up his 3 slots. With the cleaners and Rudo's powers explained, it's now time to move on to some other factions on the ground. While the cleaners are an incredibly powerful group, from what we know there are 2 other major factions in this world as well, the Raiders and the Hellguard. The Raiders are the main antagonists of the series, with the goal of collecting all the parts of the Watchmen series and returning to the heavens to destroy the sphere. While the cleaners have givers and supporters, every member of the Raiders is presumed to be a giver. We've been introduced to 9 of the Raiders, each with pretty impressive abilities. The main big bad though is Zodal Typhon, the leader of the Raiders. He possesses the Watchman coat, an ability that we haven't seen used nearly as much as the gloves. Although we know he's pretty insane, he needs every piece of the Watchmen series to destroy the sphere. Something I find super interesting about this series is no matter what the group is, people all have different goals and reasons for being there. Compared to more mainstream shonen where everyone's just fighting evil to be a hero, whether it's the Raiders or the Cleaners, everyone has their own mission. Some people in the Cleaners are solely there to protect the public, and others like to take out their anger on trash beasts. Some are just looking for a place to belong. And the Raiders are no different, although the motives of many members haven't yet been identified. One that has though is Jabberwonger, the most infamous Raider and serial freak. Jabber's in the Raiders because he's a total masochist, and gets a hard-on from fighting strong opponents and getting the shit kicked out of him. There's also Bundus, an extremely strong giver with motives that are shady, but not yet revealed. Regardless, the Raiders are still a very strong group, and hopefully we get deeper insight into their goals soon, but for now let's look into the Hellguard. The Hellguard is like the grounds police. While they aren't anti-cleaner, they have a strong disdain for givers in general. They believe that reliance on any one item makes you weak, and you should be more adaptable for any situation. The Hellguard focuses on the people, while the cleaner's job is the trash beasts. They are elite soldiers trained from a young age, and Zanka was even one of them, although he left to become a cleaner. They're generally a pretty uptight group who don't let people off the hook too much, and their prison has been described as horrifying. The main people we know in the Hellguard are Zanka's brother and sister, the captain and vice captain of the Red Horn Squad. These 2 don't mess with Zanka though, as they think he's weak and a fool for leaving to join the cleaners. Their faction is shaping up to be a pretty important one too, and I'm excited to see where the story takes them. Also, before wrapping up, I wanted to mention one more thing, and that's how everyone on the ground communicates. If you haven't already noticed, the world is full of style and I absolutely love it. All the characters have crazy eccentric fits, and it's only natural for the way of communication in the series to be just as cool. This is done through chokers that everyone wears on their neck. By having someone give a small amount of their blood to a choker, it sets up the ability to communicate with other chokers. The user must first use their own blood to activate the choker, and then anyone they'd like to communicate with must also give their blood to that choker, and the user must give their blood to that person's choker. They're pretty much just little cell phones that go around a person's neck with a much cooler vibe, and I'm here for it, man. Pretty much everyone on the ground has a choker, so as long as you make contact with someone and you're not that deep underground, you can pretty much contact whoever you want. But yeah, that's about all there is to know for the world of Gachiakuta right now. Well, at least for the setting of the series, that is. There's still plenty of specifics that I didn't dive into just because I wanted to keep this video mostly plot free. I just explained the general things that were necessary for world building. If you guys want more Gachiakuta content, don't worry. I'm planning to make more videos as the anime comes out, specifically about some of the characters in the show, as the cleaners are really the spotlight and I try not to go too deep into each one, but every cleaner is super unique and cool in their own way. So watch out for those videos soon. But honestly, I'm just so excited to see the series continue. There's honestly just so many unanswered questions that I'm itching to know. Like, who really is the leader of the cleaners and what's his vital instrument? What relation does Rudo have with the Watchmen series? And who the hell even is the Watchman? How are the sphere and ground really related? And more than anything, I really want to know more about this guy. If you know, you know. But anyways, that's about all for me. So if you guys have any theories or suggestions for future videos, make sure to drop them in the comments below. And also, of course, there's got to be the mandatory plug. So if you guys enjoyed this video, drop a like, and more than anything, if you guys could sub, that would be greatly appreciated. If you stuck around this long anyway, I'd assume that you enjoyed it, so why not? Regardless, it's all good no matter what. I just hope that you guys have a great rest of your day, and I'll catch you in the next video. Peace!